Welcome to Everything Business Consulting, a podcast dedicated to business consulting success. It's for those of you who already are a business consultant and you want to improve your skills, are an accountant and want to offer consulting services, or you may be an ex-corporate who wants to get out of the rat race and become a self-employed business consultant. Or you may have owned a business before and you now want to use the skills that you've learned to help others in business. I'm David Thexton.
And I'm Julius Bloom.
Everything Business Consulting is brought to you by ConsultX, a global business consulting company that has everything you require to become a successful business consultant or offer consulting services in your existing professional firm. If you'd like to find out more, visit ConsultX.com.
Diving into today's topic, David, we're going to talk about the types of clients you can successfully work with as a business consultant. Now, you should use this, the information in this podcast as a bit of a guide to finding the best and the easiest types of clients when you're starting out in your consulting business. And there will be some hints in there as to where you might want to go in the long term. We're going to break this down into 3 different areas to cover off today. The first, we're going to look at businesses you can consult to by their size, then businesses you could consult to broken down into their different industry types, and finally, consulting by the need for help of the businesses you're working with. And just to clarify, when we work with a business, we typically work as a business consultant across the entire business, not specifically in one particular area. Isn't that right, David?
That's correct. Yes, we do.
All right, now starting at business consulting based on size, David, do you want to tell us the pros and cons and what we would look at starting with the smallest business, a startup?
Well, a startup is generally a business that is brand spanking new, and the owners of that business, they have a desire to go into business and they want to get all of the things, all of the benefits that you get out of owning a business. They've seen other people do it and they've saved some money up, or they can borrow some money or something like that, and they decide they're going to change their lifestyle completely from working for somebody else into owning their own business. So the problem is that they don't know how to run a business. Mm-hmm. So they have the money, they have an idea of what industry they're going to go into, and whether they're going to be a retailer or a manufacturer, and they get going, but they have way more confidence than what they've got in ability, essentially. The
Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yes.
If you haven't heard of that, look up the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah, well, there's a primitive version of that which is called battleship ambitions and rowboat ability, which is a little bit of fun there. But anyway, that's what it is, and they really want to do well, but the government has given them a license. They have no tests, no training. They just jump straight into it. Generally good at what they do. If they're involved in manufacturing furniture, for example, they're good at doing that. Or if they're involved in running a garden centre, they're good at doing that. They know all about plants and things, but they don't know about running a business.
So they're good at the technician role or the technical aspect of what they do, but not so much generally in running a business itself.
Yes, yeah. I believe in a few books they've been called technicians, and I was trying to think of the guy's name, but they call them technicians because they're good at what they do, but they don't know how to run a business. So that's where startups are. Quite often, startups. If a startup was doing the best thing that they could possibly do, they would take on a business consultant because of the fact that they don't know how to run a business. But you're fighting with a startup, you're fighting against that bravado and that and that ability, that battleship ambition, and they are so positive and they're so passionate. They think they can jump tall buildings, but they actually can't.
So they're at a point where they've just started. They don't know yet what they don't know.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and yet this is the time that somebody should be in helping them. They might have a few $100,000, and they need somebody to come in and sort it and help them sort their business out and everything before they lose it. Like I'd rather help a business that's still got their equity intact than it's all gone.
It'd be easier. So would you suggest, as a business consultant, you go out and hunt these startup types of businesses?
Well, you don't need to hunt them. You'll just find them. That you'll just come across them, and then it's up to you to make the decision. They tend to be a little bit more difficult to sign up as clients, as I said, because they think they know everything, and as compared to a business who's been going for a few years and they had a few ups and downs and they're having challenges, they're easier to sign up as a client because they are having problems.
And is it feasible to sign up a small new business who isn't perhaps turning over a lot of money? Could they afford your fees?
Well, that's another issue. You don't want to go too small because although they may need you, what you cost may be way more than what they can afford. And they may need to grow a bit bigger. It's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it, really? Yeah, you need to wait a few years for them to be big enough to be able to afford your fees, but yet they need you there right there and then. So it's a bit of a catch-22.
So how would you approach it then if you stumbled upon a small startup type business who perhaps weren't ready, they didn't see the necessity for bringing on someone like you, or they couldn't afford it? How would you attack that, and how would you sort of keep in touch with them so that when they are ready or they can see the value in it, you can start to consult to them?
Just by doing that, exactly what you said, by taking accurate notes and marking in my diary in 6 months' time to give them a call and just see how things are progressing and have a general discussion with them, like it's only going to be 5 or 10 minutes.
So just keep that relationship going and don't discount it by any means, but don't try and get them on straight away. Yeah,
well, in our consulting program, we say that you should always keep around about 10% of your time put aside for just keeping the prospect pot simmering along, because you never know when you might need another client.
Of course. Now, the next level of business up from a startup is a small business, and we've started to talk about that. Yeah. Can you just go into the details of the difference between a startup and a small business?
A small business is a startup that's been going for a few years, and they have survived, and they have around about $1 million in revenue, something like that, and it's basically run by the owner themselves and maybe a couple of staff or something like that. Yeah, it's been going for a while. It's been going for long enough for the cracks to show. Mm-hmm. And when you have your first meetings with them, we call it a discovery meeting, you'll find out what's actually going on and where the challenges and where the problems are.
Okay, now do these make better prospects to become clients?
Yes, because they have challenges. And no business owner is going to take you on unless they believe that you're able to help them.
Okay, and can they afford the fees better, whereas a startup couldn't?
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And the beauty of our system, our ConsultX system, is that we work on a percentage of monthly revenue. So as the business gets bigger and bigger, our fees come up. So we might start with small fees right at the very start, and you've got a very good example of that with a client that you're working with, and then as it gets bigger and bigger, you start to get your income, your fee starts to get larger to repay you for the work that you've done.
If you're not familiar with the way that we like to structure our contracts and agreements with the growing fee structure, I'll put a link in the podcast show notes to the podcast that actually goes into that in greater detail.
That's good, yeah.
Now, I will also mention that you want to be a little bit careful with the smaller end of small businesses, especially when you're starting out. A pitfall can be to sign up, because they're relatively easy to sign up, a whole raft of small businesses, and if they, although their revenue and your income might grow over time, you don't want to have the problem where starting out as a consultant you're actually not earning that much because they're too small. So definitely we typically say around or above the $1 million mark is kind of the base, but you could have a couple a little bit smaller than that, but you don't want to have too many, definitely.
No, you'd need to personally believe that you can grow them very quickly. That's important. And also, some consultants that join us do take on some smaller clients just for practice. Like $600,000, $700,000 just for practice, and they don't charge as much as they normally do. But mostly they take on smaller clients if they've got a belief in what they're doing has got some pretty big potential growth in it.
I had a conversation with one of our consultants who actually took on, he had quite a large portfolio of clients. I think he was approaching 18 or 20, and he took on just two. They were either startups or very small businesses that he both had an interest in, and he thought that they had a lot of growth potential. He took them on for a pretty minimal fee, but just to help them grow and give back a little bit, and the rest of his clients were giving him the bulk of his income. Now, David, I mentioned before that small businesses are pretty easy to sign. Why is it that small businesses are easy to get in there and sign up the business owner?
Well, because you're actually talking to the owner of the business, and
there's no gatekeepers, so to speak, or
not
typically
really.
limited amount of gatekeepers.
No. And a gatekeeper shouldn't be a problem anyway. A gatekeeper shouldn't prevent a business owner from getting good advice from a consultant. That's the opposite of what they're meant to do anyway. So why are they easy to sign as a client? That's because they are the owner and they are personally joined at the hip to the business, and both joined together, and they can't separate the business from their personal life. So when you go and talk to them and you find that the business is causing personal issues or issues in their personal life with their partner and their family probably, then it's fairly easy to offer your services and get in there and get them to agree to becoming a client of yours to work towards a common objective, which they'll tell you all about.
I've found as well that in that small size of business, typically the business owner's really stuck in the role of doing and acting as a technician, and they know that's not the right way, but because they're in that role, they've experienced all of the highs and lows, and they lack the all sorts of things, the time to deal with their staffing issues and other more working on the business type tasks, and they feel like they're being torn between their technical role and these other responsibilities. So their pain threshold, I guess, is ready for them to be consulted to and get someone in with a bit more business nous.
Yep.
The next level of a business, David, would be a more small to medium or medium-sized business. Now, how does that differ from a small business?
An SME. Well, it's been going for a few years. It stands for small to medium enterprise. It's been going for a few years. It hasn't gone broke. It's survived ups and downs and things like that. And it's like you could, if you compared it to a person, it's kind of like I suppose about a 12-year-old in one way, as compared to a small business which is only a baby or a toddler.
How big, just in size, approximately, would you call that?
1 to 5 million, 1 to 4 million.
Okay.
Yeah, it's starting to turn over a bit of money, but also too, the bigger it gets, the worse it gets. Mm-hmm. Because you can't use the same methods that you used when it was a little tiny company, when it was a startup, to run an SME. You've got to have a lot of new systems and processes that are in there, that are measuring things, that are making sure that things are on track, because it becomes a $1 to $5 million business. A $5 million business is actually, it sounds little, I know, but it's actually quite complex. There's a lot of moving parts in it. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot of opportunity for things to go wrong, and that's when the owners of these businesses need our help.
It doesn't take many things to go wrong and compound on one another to put a lot of stress on the business and the business owner.
No. And a lot of business owners don't realise that a business is actually a living entity. Well, it's a combination of a living entity and a machine. Actually, the living part of it is the people, as your employees, and the machine part is all the systems and processes that need to be operating to their best for the business to be successful.
Okay, and talking about the fees you could charge to a SME-sized business, how do they compare to a smaller business?
They're better. They're better. And what tends to happen, and I found this when I was consulting back in the early days, was that you tend to start off with a few smaller customers or clients, and then as they got bigger, you kept them. But every year, the little bit of churning goes on. Like you might lose one client for any particular reason, it could be, and you might let one client go. And this gives you a bit of freedom in your time to be able to get another client that's perhaps a bigger client with bigger fees. And things like that, because the name of the game is what you're trying to do is you're trying to get for your 40-50 hours a week, you're trying to get the maximum income that you possibly can for that amount of time that you've put in. So that's why the churning's good. Losing an occasional client, hopefully not a good one, is okay, and letting one go is okay too.
Okay, and what about the ease of getting into a SME-sized business?
SME or larger even, maybe?
No,
SMEs, you can still get to the owner of the business.
Yep.
And they're not a public company, and they don't have boards of directors as a general rule, and they don't have chairman and things like that. It's quite easy to get into them. You can get to the owner and you can talk to him or her.
Would the SME, would that be kind of the pinnacle of where it's fairly easy to get in and fairly fast still, and you can still earn a good income off them, fairly good income? Is that kind of the I guess the medium point? Yeah.
Yeah, if you saw a bell curve of this, like the SME would be right at the top. It'd be 3 to 5 million, maybe 10 if you're in America or something like that. But say 3 to 5 million, and that would be where the majority is, because of the ease of getting to the owner, the ease of the owner making a decision, the size of their income, being able to pay your fees, and all of those things surrounding it. That's where in fact, I think our average client averages somewhere around about 3.1 million. We've got a handful down at 500,000. We've got a whole lot that are up at 80, 90 million. So, but it averages at about 3. So that tells us that most of our clients are under 5 million. But that's a good. It's not. You don't have to have $100 million client. 5 million is very, very good, because if you earned 30 to 50,000 out of that 5 million, it doesn't even make a dent on the 5 million, and yet that's good income for you when you add them all up.
Particularly when you're starting out as a business consultant and you just want to get into a business as fast as possible and earn a pretty significant sum of money. That's a nice size to target, because you can get in there and sign them up, whereas with the larger companies, which we're about to talk about, it definitely takes a lot longer. And if your focus is to replace your previous income, that's something of great importance. So talking about the larger businesses, David, do you want to run us through large business and then through to corporate sized entities? Okay,
well, larger business, we'll say 5 to 10 million upwards. More difficult to sign up. You can still get to the owner of the business, and it takes maybe a little bit more time. If they're larger, then they've probably been in business longer, which means that they've survived a number of ups and downs, and they're successful because they're still in existence. They've still got challenges and problems, but they're a little bit more difficult to get into. You have to work a bit harder. You might have to have, instead of 3 meetings with them, maybe 4 or 5. You might have to bend and twist a bit in your proposal of what you're offering to do for them. But they're worth getting, obviously, and they take a bit longer. Obviously, some of the smaller ones, the SMEs, under your consulting management, will end up becoming large businesses anyway. So you'll grow them yourself, and that's where you get the kudos or the praise from the owner of those businesses, or the large business. And of course, going on to corporate, which you had just mentioned before. Corporate is where they do have a board of directors. They probably do have a chairman, quite often an external chairman, and some external directors, and they're getting in the sort of 30 million up. Could be any size, and that's probably the most difficult to get into because you can't get to the owner. Between you and the owner is a external chairman and a board of directors, and they would probably consider that they've got enough brains on the job there, and they would probably not entertain an approach. Although I got through to a couple.
We've had a few people within the network do so as well, haven't we?
Yes, we have. But we've also had people too who have said, David, I'm going to spend all my time working on corporate, and they've spent a year and ended up with 1 or 2.
Okay.
And I'm saying, no, that's not top of the bell curve.
No.
Like, it's the bottom of the bell curve on the other side, And so between large business and SME is where I think you should aim your prospecting activities.
So for the amount of time invested into a corporate versus what you're going to get back, you're going to get good returns, but you have to put in a lot of effort and be prepared to take some losses to be able to get to a corporate.
Well, you might never get there, is what I'm saying. You might never get there. These people I'm talking about, I did counsel them, and I did say, you have to, I think you need to go down a peg into that sort of $5 million area, because you're going to find that you'll be fighting all of these egos, and I'm not being rude when I say egos. What I'm saying is there are directors and there's an external chairman and everything. They have been brought in to offer assistance to the owners of the business or the shareholders of the business, and that's what they are perceived to be there for. Whether good or bad is another question, but yeah. So I would, if I went out on Monday morning, I'd be going straight for those $5 million-ish businesses, because I can get a quick decision.
Okay, very good. Now the next segment, or the next type of way that we're going to break down businesses we could consult to is by industry, David. Now we want to look at retail, wholesale, and manufacturing. Can you take us through the pros and cons of consulting to these types overall, and then we'll start with retail?
Firstly, those are the 3 types that we've got there. You could be an expert in retail, you could be an expert in wholesale, you could be an expert in manufacturing. And some people have decided, some of our consultants have decided, that they're really, really good at manufacturing. They came from manufacturing. There might be time and motion study. They might be really good at quality. They might be really good at environmental, all these sorts of things. And they've decided that they're going to become a business consultant that specialises in that.
In that particular area, yep.
And that's fine. That is absolutely fine. And taking the ConsultX system and marrying it to their experience in manufacturing, they will go out and talk to manufacturing companies. They might be more comfortable. They might just it might just give them that extra pep in their step, to basically go out and do that. The same with wholesaling. they might wholesaling. Just for those of you that want an exact definition of it, your manufacturer manufactures something, generally sells it to a wholesale who buys pallet loads or truckloads of something. The wholesaler breaks it up into units and sells it to retail. Like the corner store doesn't want to buy a pallet load of heaters. He wants to buy 2 or something like that. So somebody might be really good at wholesaling and come from the wholesaling industry and specialise in that. They might be really good at retail, take our program, put it together with their experience, and go out and specialise in retailers. But you can drill down even finer than that. I know consultants who are experts in restaurants. I met a consultant a couple of years ago who was an expert in dancing schools. Like you can go as focused down as much as you want to. I met a person who was an expert in pens, fountain pens. He owned a fountain pen business, and he consulted to people all around the world through the internet on pens. People that collect pens and things like that, who run businesses doing that. And watches. I've heard of a watch guy, I haven't met one. But so as a consultant, you can consult in any type of business that you want to, if you want to feel comfortable. But what does happen though, those people that have done that quite often have found out that they've started off being an expert in manufacturing, and 2 years later you talk to them and find out who their clients are, and they find that they've been referred from the manufacturers off to a wholesaler or to a retailer or to something else, a different type of manufacturing. So they end up becoming broad spectrum consultants anyway.
Okay. And is there a better industry?
Nope, none.
None at all. So there's no area you'd recommend starting in terms of industry that they come from. Start
where your expertise is, maybe, but you'll find your referrals will send you outside of that.
Okay, now we're going to look at the last and perhaps, David, the most important way to look for a business to consult to, and that is their need for help. Do you want to run us through what we need to look for in a business's need for help?
Well, over all the years, we've discovered that it kind of breaks down, like the business owners. If you got them all together and you were able to measure them all, you'd find that out of all the business owners, 5% of them get a generous salary. Generous means that they're being paid more than what they would be paid if they were working for somebody else doing the same job. That's what we call a generous salary. However, it's a very profitable business, and they are able at the end of the year to pay themselves a large dividend because it's left over, and that money is not needed in the business. So that's 5%.
So that's the top, very top segment
of the triangle.
Yes.
It is. Yeah. Then there's 20% of owners, the next level down, who get the same generous salary, but they clean the company out and there are no dividends. There's not enough there. The company's profitable and they're doing very, very well, but there are no dividends. They're working in the business as opposed to on it. And it's really a low value business. If you look at go back to the 5%, the first business we talked about, that's very valuable because somebody can buy that business and do not need to work in it. They can put a manager in there, and they can be the chairman of the board or something like that, or the CEO, and work 2 days a week or something like that. So going back to the second level, the 20%, they get that salary, but there are no dividends. They're working in the business, and that tends to lower the value of the business down compared to the first one. The next level down, which approximately makes up about 40% of owners, they get a low paid salary, and by low paid I mean they're getting paid lower than what they would get if they're doing the same job working for somebody else.
40% of business owners fall onto that.
Yes, they do. Yeah, that's right in the heart of our potential clients.
Okay. And this is mostly in that range of businesses that we talked about before to target the SME sort of sector?
Yes, yeah, it's in there. Yep, definitely. And of course, because their salary's so low, there isn't going to be any dividend. They've got a high mortgage as the business continually needs cash.
So they're feeding cash into the business.
Yes, they are. Yeah, it's a cycle that is all the wrong way, unfortunately. And the business really has got no value, although somebody may buy the business just to get the customer list or the assets or something like that. Then you get down to the bottom of the triangle, right at the very base, and that's approximately 35%. They get no salary or dividend because the business doesn't make any money, and they tend to live off the equity growth in their home. And what I mean by that is houses are going up quite rapidly in value at the moment, so they get it every couple of years. They get the house revalued, and they go and borrow some more money, and they live off that. The business has no value, it's losing money, and failure is imminent. It could fail, it probably will, but sometimes they just limp on and limp on. I've worked with a few companies like that, and we've actually saved them. I've also worked with some where we just couldn't save them, and I've helped them to go not bankrupt. Actually, I've saved them both from bankruptcy, but I helped them to close the business down without going bankrupt, which was a bit of an accomplishment in itself.
Well, so that means that something like 75% of businesses are really in quite a poor shape and in a massive need for help.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so of those businesses, David, that we just talked about, the 5% that were doing really, really well, the 20% that are doing fairly well, and then the 40% that are doing not good, and the 35% that are doing really quite poorly, where would you start to look for clients?
Well, you don't know until you start talking to them straight away. Where would I start looking? I would look everywhere. I even now, I don't have clients now, but I drive down the road and I see trucks and cars and vans and billboards, and I hear ads on the radio, and I get stuff in my mailbox, and that's where you find it. You find the clients in business associations and chambers of commerce and places like that. They're everywhere. They're everywhere.
In those different segments we discussed, is there any of them that you'd particularly target to begin
No,
with?
because you don't know where they are. You might have an idea on the 5% when you have your first discussion, and they flash their Rolex watch at you, and they've got a brand new $500,000 Mercedes sitting out in the driveway. You get a bit of an idea, but although that's not the total idea either, it could be all under at least or hire purchase or something. You can lease watches now, by the way.
Can you?
Yes, when I was consulting in Australia, I had a client who owned a bodybuilding company, and he had a Rolex watch that was just covered in diamonds and gold and everything you could think of. And I said, "What's that watch worth?" And he said, "It's about $600,000.
What?
I know. That's what I said. What? And he said, "Don't you know you can lease them?" I said, "You're having me on." Because he had a Ferrari. I told you about the Ferrari. Yeah. He had a Ferrari as well. I think the Ferrari cost him $12,000 a month, and the watch was something like about, it must have been about, I'm sure he said about $5,000 to $6,000 a month. So yeah. Like a watch is a watch.
Yeah. I imagine a motor car would depreciate at a far greater rate than a watch.
Oh, watches go up.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're about the same as houses, actually, thinking about it.
Okay, that's not bad.
True. So, you find them everywhere, and the name of the game is you're not going to find them if you don't talk to them. And if you don't have activity, you're not out there, and you're not looking, and your ears and eyes aren't open, and those sorts of things, yeah.
All right, well then when you're looking for them and you start to consult to them, do you break them down into any particular way?
break them down to rescue, improve, and grow, which is how you find them. The grow businesses are typically those 5%ers, where they're not, certainly not in rescue, and they are in a little bit of improve. It's probably a combination of improve and grow when you're the 5%ers, because they can always grow and they can always improve. They don't think they can improve, but they can. In there, but you typically find people in that improve, in that centre position, I suppose you'd call it, and that's where many things can be improved, and once you've improved it, you can grow. If you can imagine that even some clients that you take on that are in rescue, your job is to get them from rescue to improve, and then get them from improve to grow. So get them out of the fire, basically, and
start to improve them and then grow them.
Yeah, save them essentially, and then improve them.
So that's how when you're working with a business, how you look at it. You want to make sure that they don't need to be rescued, and if they do, you rescue them, and then look at improving all aspects of the business, I guess. And once everything's running smoothly, really try and grow it.
Yes, of course.
Wonderful. Well, that's been a very informative discussion, David, and I think I've got a much better idea of the types of businesses you could consult to and where to start looking for them, and what you could even do when you start working with them, the rescuing and the improving and the growing. So I hope that our listeners today have gained some valuable insights, because I know that I certainly have. We would also like to make it known that you can really help business owners by becoming a business consultant with ConsultX, and we go into much greater depth about the kinds of discussions that we've had today. We've got a really in-depth training package and all of the tools that you could ever want. And we've got a bit of a special now, a launch package that we're offering, so jump over to our website ConsultX.com to find out more about that, and we'll send you through some information. Thank you very much, David. We will catch you at the next podcast.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for watching and listening. Everything Business Consulting is brought to you by ConsultX. It's a global business consulting company that has everything that you require to become a successful business consultant, or to offer consulting services in your existing professional firm. If you'd like to find out more, come visit us at ConsultX.com.